Well, hello, and happy Sunday, everybody. My name is Scott Pinyard. I'm the head coach here at This Naked Mind, and I'm going live today, like I do most Sundays, except last week, like I do most Sundays, to talk about some things I'm seeing, right? To talk about some concepts or some ideas or some things that have either been floating around in my head or things that I've seen in our groups. And today I want to talk about something that I have seen so often in this process of change, which is assumptions. I am going to talk about assumptions. I am going to talk about what are these assumptions that we need. Or I'm going to talk about what happens when we make assumptions. I want you to ask me questions about assumptions. I have some stuff I want to prepare, or that I've prepared that I want to talk about, but I want to hear from you. Tell me about what assumptions are like for you, and I want to tell you 3 key things about assumptions, something that you might not actually know. So I want to tell you what those 3 things are, and then I want to talk about a few ways to work with assumptions to help you enjoy whatever sort of change you're going through. And I want to be clear, I'm going to focus on alcohol when I talk about this, but this applies to so much more. So please feel free, say hi, tell me where you're at, send me some questions. I'm going to dive in just a second, but first, if you are ready to challenge some assumptions around alcohol and how it fits in your life and what an alcohol-free life might feel like, and just assumptions about alcohol and your ability to change, then I highly recommend that you check out the free Alcohol Experiment. Alcohol Experiment is a 30-day program where we give you content every single day that talks about alcohol. It talks about how it affects you mentally and physically and emotionally. It talks about how it affects your life. Hey, Stacy from Greenville, how's it going? It talks about how you can change your relationship with alcohol. And it all starts with this 30-day program. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to challenge some assumptions, please head on over to alcoholexperiment.com. It's 100% free. You can start it right away if you would like. We'd love to see you over there. Okay. So, assumptions. Hey, Amanda in Australia, day 330 alcohol free. From the January Live Alcohol Experiment, 30-day experiment changed my life. That's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations. That's so good. So I want to talk about assumptions, right? We all live with so many assumptions. And in some ways, hey, Maria, how are you? I'm well. I hope you're good too. We all live with so many assumptions, right? And we make assumptions all the time. And sometimes they're very helpful, right? Sometimes assumptions can keep us safe. Assumptions can keep us in a place where, we're not getting hurt, whether it be physically or otherwise. However, we've all been in those situations where assumptions are not so helpful, right? And this is specifically true when it comes to something like drinking, right? Or making any big change in your life, right? So this is how assumptions normally work, right? There's a scenario, a thought, an idea, a person, whatever, right? Comes into your brain and you automatically assume what's going to happen, right? You assume, and when we assume things, we take it on not as like, oh, I bet this is going to happen. That's not how we do it, right? When we make assumptions, we're like, oh, this thing happened, now this thing's going to happen. And it is not a conscious process. I want to be clear about that, right? You're not doing anything wrong when you're making an assumption. And a lot of the time, it works in your favor, right? You assume because maybe it's sleeting outside and it's been 30 degrees Fahrenheit, you assume that the sidewalk could be slippery. That's a good thing, right? Or maybe you assume that the brake lights on that car in front of you are on because that car is slowing down and maybe you should slow down, right? So there are plenty of times where assumptions work, right? And they help us. And we do this because it allows our brains to avoid having to process everything all the time, right? If we can take previous experience and we can say, all right, previous experience, this happened. So I'm in this similar situation. So maybe this event's going to happen, right? We can do that instead of having to think through all the possibilities and try to figure out, man, exactly where is this going to go? So our brains are automatically making these assumptions consistently all the time, right? And a lot of the time, as I mentioned, they can be helpful. However, you know the saying about the word assume, right? Every time you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right? Assumptions can go awry. And sometimes they are just wrong. And sometimes they're not just wrong, but straight up unhelpful, right? They can straight up completely shift a situation. And I am guessing that you can look back over your life and you can find places where you made an assumption and it turned out to be wrong, and you wished, man, I wish I hadn't assumed that, right? I wish I hadn't assumed, when I saw that friend of mine and they had a nasty look on their face, that they weren't mad at me, right? Or, man, I wish I had assumed it was actually icy out there and not that I, was able to skate my way to my car, right? Whatever that might be. And here is, I assume I can't, so why try? That's fantastic, Kelly. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Maria is a murder investigator, right? So you don't assume anything in an investigation. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about assumptions, right? So sometimes assumptions are good. Very often assumptions are bad. So why the hell am I talking about all of this, right? I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. And I'm telling you about this because assumptions can get in your way, right? Assumptions can get in your way. When you're trying to make a change, when you're trying to enjoy that change, right? Maybe you're quitting drinking and you're doing it so that you can have a better experience in life, whatever that might mean for you, right? Better opportunities at work, or better time with your family, or just waking up without a headache, whatever that might be, right? Very often assumptions get in your way. So I want to give you 3 things to remember. Hey, Ellie, how are you? I want to give you 3 things to remember about assumptions, right? And again, these 3 things are so clear that I want you to keep these 3 things clear so that when this is happening, you can become aware of it. And we'll talk about awareness as we go on. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this. I want you to take a second and imagine a change you've tried to make, right? Imagine something that you were going to do. There's a good chance, if it's a difficult change, maybe you've tried it a few times. Maybe for you, like it was for me, it's quitting drinking, right? And so you get into this pattern where you're like, all right, I'm going to quit drinking. And like I used to say every Friday, I was like, all right, this is it. And then like tomorrow, I'm done, right? But I never was, right? I always ended up going back to the store. Now, in that Saturday morning, when I woke up, right, and I had that headache, for a little while, I was like, you know what, I can do this. But then those thoughts start creeping in. Those assumptions start creeping in. Oh man, tonight is going to suck. I am assuming that I'm not going to be able to have any fun. I am assuming that I'm not going to sleep. All of these things, by the way, are happening in the future, right? But I'm assuming them to be true. And those assumptions are actually shaping my experience. And that's the first thing I want you to remember, right? Assumptions shape your experience. Here's what I mean, right? I want you to imagine that you're going to be going to a party, right? And there are probably people out there who have gone through this. So if you have, please chime in, tell me what this is like for you. But assume that you're newly alcohol free and you're going to a party. Now, a certain amount of nerves, right? A certain amount of nervousness, a certain amount of, butterflies in the stomach would be totally normal in that situation, right? It would be completely normal as a first party alcohol-free, first wedding alcohol-free, maybe. That nervousness is fine, but if that nervousness turns into, this is going to totally suck, right? This is going to suck. This is going to be awful. This is going to be difficult, right? I'm going to be miserable. People are going to react to me in a bad way, in a way that I don't want them to, right? You start making these assumptions. And when you have these thoughts, you start feeling these feelings. And guess what happens? You get what you assume. And I am so serious about this. I know that some of you are like, well, wait a minute, just like having an assumption isn't going to change what happens. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you have all of these assumptions ahead of an event, ahead of something, and those assumptions are negative, when you go into that thing, that's the mood you're going to be in. That's the frame of reference through which you are going to view the entire event. So if the assumption is this is going to suck, or if the assumption is, man, I am going to be miserable, or the assumption is, man, so many people are going to be mad at me because I'm not drinking, your brain will find it. you will experience it. So you will go into this party and you're thinking, man, this is going to suck. And guess what? You'll be right. It's amazing. And again, because these assumptions are not necessarily always a conscious process, we're not as aware of this. But if you think back on your experience, I would bet money that you can find times when this has happened, right? You can find times when you assume something was going to be terrible and then you go into the situation and it was terrible. Guess what? Right? That's a feedback loop. So then you're done with that party or you're done with that wedding and you're like, see, I knew it. I knew it. Right? It just like reinforces the experience. Even though the thing that actually made you have a bad experience was your own attitude, right? Or your own perspective going into this. You think about something like going to a party and thinking, oh man, people are going to be staring at me because I'm not drinking, right? That's the thought you have when you go into the room. Then you go into the room and your brain is looking for evidence. You're looking for evidence that people are staring at you. Right? You're looking for evidence that you're not having a good time and you will find it. Meanwhile, there's all other types of things happening. Right? There's all types of other things going on that had you paid attention to those things, maybe you would have had a better experience. So, first thing I want you to remember about assumptions is that assumptions can shape your experience. Right? Here's another thing that assumptions can do. And this is going to sound strange, but bear with me. They can rob you of some of the joy of change. They can rob you of some of the joy of change. And to explain this, I want you to think for a minute about why it is that maybe you want to quit drinking, right? Maybe you want to be able to have a social night out and remember the whole thing, right? Maybe it's that you want to have deeper relationships. And see, assumptions help you avoid these surprises to the journey, right? Assumptions, if you're assuming you're going to have a bad time, then guess what? You're probably not going to achieve that why that you have, right? Assumptions help you avoid surprises. And one of the best things about this change journey are the surprises that happen along the way, both good and bad, by the way. So if you are able to see those assumptions and recognize, wait a minute, like I am just assuming that this is going to be terrible. I am assuming that it's not going to be good. And if you believe what I said in point 1, right, that you're going to experience what you get, well, then point 2, assumptions are going to make your change journey so much harder because you're not going to be surprised, right? You're not going to be challenged. You're not going to go into the situation and say, wow, I assumed this was going to be terrible and it wasn't. If you think about a time when you did that, it's because you suspended that assumption for a minute and just experienced it. So, number 1, assumptions will actually shape your experience. Number 2, assumptions can rob you of some of the joy of change, which are these surprises along the way, right? These experiences that we have. The first time you go to a party alcohol-free can actually be exhilarating. But if we assume it's bad, we don't get to experience that joy. And so the third point that I want you to think about is this. The antidote to bad assumptions is curiosity. The antidote to bad assumptions is curiosity, right? So I want you to think about this, right? People assume things, and when we assume things, we just go down this track and we're thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible. So we first of all shape our experience. Second, we miss these opportunities to actually experience spontaneous joy, like things we weren't expecting. And then we go to this party. Hey, Jim, how's it going? Good to see you. Then we go to this party and we forget to completely check in with ourselves, right? Because we're so convinced that this party is going to suck. We're not even checking to see if we have fun. We're too busy looking for evidence. And so the antidote to bad assumptions is curiosity. To be curious. Oh man, I really expect this party to be sucky. Well, is it? What does that really mean? How is it going to be sucky? Is it possible that it's not? Right? These sort of questions, this curious mindset, this curious attitude is going to really help you as you move through the process, because you're going to be checking in on things that are not your assumptions, right? It takes you out of your head and has you start looking out in front of you and around you, right? So assumptions will shape your experience. Number two, assumptions can steal joy from this process, those surprise moments where you can actually encounter joy when you don't expect it. And number three, the antidote to bad assumptions is curiosity. So, what do we do? What do we do? Right? First, I want to give you 3 points that you can kind of remember as you go through this process. Whatever your change journey happens to be with alcohol, it's really big. These assumptions are big. This is going to be hard. This is going to be tough. I'm going to be miserable. So first, remember that you can challenge your assumptions. And this is funny because from a coaching perspective, I very regularly have to remind people that they don't have to believe everything they think. And I know that sounds weird when I say it that way, but this is what I see, right? People are going through some sort of a change journey and they literally believe every thought that you're going to have, right? Oh, you have this thought that, oh, this party's going to suck. And like, you just believe it, right? There's no conversation. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think about having a dialogue in your head, right? Instead of having a monologue, instead of just having that voice in your head, I want you to think like, what would happen if I questioned that voice, right? What would happen if I challenged that assumption? And there's a really simple litmus test, a really simple way that you can decide, man, is this something I want to challenge? And it's this, right? If you make an assumption, so if you have that thought, this party's going to suck, ask yourself, does it feel good to think that way or not? Chances are no, right? Chances are if you're like, oh, this thing I'm on my way to is going to suck, you probably, doesn't make you very happy to get there. So if that's the case, challenge it, right? Ask yourself, how true is that really? Like, whoa, that was an intense thought. How true is that? Is it actually true that this is going to suck? Is it actually true that people are going to look at me weird if I'm not drinking? Really dig into it and ask yourself for evidence. Because when you start to do this, you can start to understand, wait a minute, there is this constant monologue that's going on in my head. And most of the stuff that voice says isn't necessarily true. Now, it doesn't mean that you have exactly do and act. I love it. It doesn't mean that you have a. It doesn't mean that you have a situation where you maybe have some experience in the past where things were difficult, and now you're afraid it's going to be difficult. That's totally fine. But being afraid is very different than knowing what's going to happen. So remember, you can challenge your assumptions. You are not a victim of your thoughts. You can work with those thoughts. Number two, I want you to remember that you are in control. And here's what I mean by this, right? I want you to remember that you are in control of what you're focusing on. You are in control of what you think about. Right? You are in control of your thought process. And yes, assumptions in the same box with expectations. Yes, this could be totally interchangeable. I'm saying assumptions because I've been hearing a lot of assumptions about holidays and stuff. But yes, expectations are very, very similar. So you are in control of what you focus on. So remember, when these assumptions come up and you feel bad or you feel negative about that party or that event or that vacation or that person or neighborhood gathering or whatever it might be, remember that you actually are in control of your mindset as you go into this situation. Remember that you have a very powerful tool, which is your focus, and that you can use it to make sure that that assumption doesn't come true. Right? To make sure that that assumption that you had doesn't end up becoming your experience. So first, remember you can challenge your assumptions. Second, remember that you are in control. And finally, above all else, remember to give yourself compassion. I always am in this situation when I talk to people about this concept of, challenging your assumptions and becoming aware of your assumptions. Almost always someone comes back to me and they're like, Scott, I've been trying to do this and holy cow, do I make a lot of negative assumptions? I had no idea, right? So you bring awareness to this topic, and now all of a sudden you start to realize how many times a day you make a negative assumption, right? You start to realize how many times a day you are setting yourself up to have this assumption shape your experience. And so I want to emphasize, now that I've put these ideas in your head, I want to emphasize that you need to give yourself compassion. And the way that you can do that is to remember this. Give yourself compassion because making assumptions is human. Right? All of that stuff I said at the top of, assumptions working out for the best, and it's a way for sort of a mental shortcut for us, right? We can assume how things are going to turn out so that we can act accordingly, we can keep ourselves safe, right? All of those things are happening. That is exactly how a brain, or one of the things your brain was built to do. It was literally built to make these assumptions because it allows you to experience so much more because you're not having to think through all the possibilities. So when you start doing this work and you start looking at your assumptions, I want you to remember to give yourself compassion because it's what your brain was built to do. And, I am not kidding. If you do start paying attention to this, I do have some people will write them down, like write down assumptions throughout the day, like, all right, how is this going? What is it feeling like? What is it, what are the thoughts? How is this all feeling? I will see people do this and they'll have these really, really long lists. And they'll just think like, man, my negative thoughts are so huge. I have so many more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. That is okay, right? That is your brain trying to protect you. So as you're becoming aware of the assumptions that you're making with your change journey, give yourself some compassion, because the fact that you are noticing these assumptions, the fact that you're thinking about these assumptions, and the fact that you are trying to shift it are all signs that you're on the right track. So those are my thoughts about assumptions. And I want to tell you, a few people are saying internet's cutting in and out. I think Facebook is having some issues tonight. But those are my thoughts about assumptions. I hope those are helpful. I very, very much love this idea of how much more responsibility we have over our experience. And just paying attention to your assumptions and just working with them, challenging them, right? Giving yourself compassion and remembering that you can choose your focus, those things can shift your experience entirely. So I hope that is helpful. Stacy says, my therapist will say, is it likely to happen or just a possibility? Yes, exactly. Right? We become so focused. This is what's going to happen. We start to zoom out and we challenge those assumptions. It's a game changer. So I hope these concepts and these ideas were helpful to you. I am going to wrap up. I'd love you to tell me what you think about this video in the comments. If you're watching it later on, I want to hear about it. I want to hear if this is helpful. I want to hear if this sort of content are the sort of things that you move forward with that are helpful to you. So please comment with that. Oh, I see a comment here. Alex said, you mentioned that sometimes it's not about assumptions, but fear. How do you go about your attitude towards a certain event in the future when the assumptions are based on fear? Yes, that's a fantastic question. Now, let me differentiate these two things, right? An assumption is a foregone conclusion. Right? An assumption is hey, Carrie, how are you? Good to see you. An assumption is an idea like this is what's going to happen. Fear, on the other hand, fear is this could happen, right? That might seem like a small differentiator, but I actually think that fear is better than assumptions, right? Assumptions are final. That is why we spend so much time looking for evidence of these assumptions that we've had, because we quote unquote know it's going to turn out this way. Whereas fear is more of like, oh, it could turn out this way. So when you are experiencing fear about a situation, the same exact ideas apply, right? Get curious. Why am I afraid of this? right? What is this fear based on? Is this based on a previous experience? Is this just based on something because it's new? Is this based on the fact that I haven't gone to a party before and I've been alcohol free for, most of the pandemic, right? Whatever that is, get clear on what that fear is based on. And then just like with those assumptions, ask yourself, is this true? Ask yourself, are you going to be able to, ask yourself, is it true? And do I find any evidence to the contrary? One of the things that I found was super helpful with fear is to look for evidence of the opposite of that fear. So I am afraid that my best friend's really going to not like the fact that I'm not drinking, right? There's a fear. And maybe, I know that I need to have a conversation. And so what am I going to do? And I'm really afraid of this. Well, if that was the fear I was having, I would look for times in my experience with my best friend where maybe I was wrong, right? Or where maybe they were supportive. Maybe they did go above and beyond, right? So one of the best things you can do with fear is challenge it. Ask yourself for evidence of this, not just the emotional assumption. So I hope that helps. In my little sort of graded scale, I love fear compared to assumption because fear doesn't have a finality to it. Fear implies an open-endedness, and that open-endedness really allows you to explore and be curious. So I hope that's helpful, Alex. Let's see. Stacy said that was helpful, but I'm always trying to figure out when you were doing lives, especially on Sundays. I know. Well, here's the thing, right? I do not do them at the same time every Sunday. I might need to move toward that as we get into the new year. I'm getting more people sort of making this comment, and that's because, I got a family, and so my Sunday schedules are kind of all over the place. So I don't know exactly when I'll be in one place, but I may try to nail that down going forward. So stay tuned, Stacy. I'll see if I can't come up with something that works all around. But thank you for being here today. I'm glad you are. Amanda Jane said, I did some work with a therapist regarding fear, etc., bipolar exposure, the best and worst case scenario, and how you would handle it in any given situation. Yes, fear, right? This idea of being afraid of this party or being afraid of this scenario or this person, right? That is one possibility. And it's not all of the possibilities. And what tends to happen when someone's focused on it is we narrow in our focus to this one thing and we forget all of the other possibilities are out there. So that's good. Thank you for that contribution, Amanda. All right, everybody. With that, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Well, for some of you, I guess it's Sunday already, or Monday already, so I hope that you're having a good Monday. As always, I want to hear feedback, so please let me know, again, on this video, what you think. Is this helpful? Is this not helpful? Do you have requests? Do you have something you want me to talk about? Do you have something you want me to go live and talk through, or concepts or ideas? I would love to hear it. Just go ahead and comment here on this video. And before I go, I just want to mention one more time, if you want to challenge some assumptions, I highly recommend checking out the Alcohol Experiment. It is a totally free 30-day program you can get at alcoholexperiment.com. And it is all about learning about alcohol, challenging those assumptions, getting out of the realm of emotion and into the realm of facts of how it affects you physically and mentally and emotionally. The whole goal being to shift your thinking around alcohol. And again, it is 100% free. So if you are interested in that, head on over to alcoholexperiment.com and you can get started today. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I will be back next Sunday. Have a great week. Take care.